In fall 1984, Mark L. Grover continued the analysis of what changed to lead to the revelation in his article, Religious Accommodation in the Land of Racial Democracy, Mormon Priesthood and Black Brazilians. Grover offered further support for the Brazil hypothesis that church growth in Brazil was really unsustainable with the doctrine of racial boundaries. This article lays out a history of the church in Brazil and the complications of the church's racial teachings created there. This issue created a conflict between Brazilian and American racial ideologies and a lot of heartache and confusion in those years. When Kimball announced a temple to be constructed in Brazil in 1975, that set the stage for the eventual changes as the church was now invested in Brazil. Again, this was just one of the impetuses for change, but it decentered the U.S. civil rights controversies as the primary drivers for the 1978 revelation. In spring of 1990, Grover followed up this article with another one, The Mormon Priesthood Revelation and the Sao Paulo, Brazil Temple. Here, he connected the revelation on the priesthood to the Brazil temple in direct ways, showing again the international context that shaped LDS attitudes and paved the way for the revelation on race. In 1992, famed LDS historian James Allen offered further contextualization for the church's globalization that began in earnest under David O. McKay in his article on Becoming a Universal Church, Some Historical Perspectives. Contrasting where the church was in 1950 with where it was in 1990, Allen recounted all the changes that had happened and noted dramatic shifts in church teachings and the makeup of the church itself. In winter 1994, Andrew Clark continued this trend in The Fading Curse of Cain, Mormonism in South Africa. About 5 years before this essay was published, South African apartheid came to an end, and in 1994, Nelson Mandela was elected as president. This is more of an essay than an article discussing what it was like to attend the all-black congregation in Soweto and talking about some of the members there. Still, it offers some history of the church in South Africa and a discussion of the historical and ongoing racial tensions there. While the articles from this period weren't so naive to think that racism was gone from the church, they tended to be celebratory and triumphalist about progress from the 1960s and 70s. They saw the church as more racially inclusive, which allowed it to grow internationally, showing how the 1978 revelation benefited the church. In the same winter 1994 issue, Eugene England returned to the pages of dialogue with his essay, No Respecter of Persons, A Mormon Ethics of Diversity. England calls Mormons to repent for the past and present racism and to embrace diversity as a core value. He wrote, quote, "We cannot succeed fully in taking the healing and unifying gospel to a world that remains divided by race and sex, by any form of fear of the other. We can't, especially if we as Mormons remain divided, until for us, as well as for our God, all are alike, black and white, male and female." It's a pretty forthright look at ongoing racism that he encountered at BYU, the shortcomings of leadership on this issue, and a strong theological and scriptural argument for diversity and equality. I should also mention that historian Jesse Embry published an article in the spring 1990 dialogue, Separate but Equal, Black Brothers, Genesis Groups, or Integrated Wards, that looked at the complicated questions of fellowship and integration among Black members. She notes that the tensions and questions around integration and the benefits of separate units or groups for Black members that honestly still exist to this day is worth checking out an early take. In 1992, she published a follow-up, Ethnic Groups in the LDS Church, that offered a history of segregated ethnic wards and branches for immigrant and foreign language